Thanks everyone for joining us today for our webinar. I'm Maddy Quirk from AUSVEG and I'll be talking about exotic leaf miners and providing an update on the Hort Innovation-funded project for control, eradication and preparedness for vegetable leaf miner. So exotic leaf miners are a major pest of agriculture in many parts of the world. They're on the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment's top 40 pest list. And they pose a significant threat to Australia's horticulture industries. The vegetable leaf miner Liriomyza sativa was detected in the Cape York Peninsula in Seychelles in 2015 and is currently under quarantine in that region. Serpentine leaf miner Liriomyza huidobrensis was detected in Greater Sydney in October this year and is currently under delimitation, but I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And American serpentine leaf miner Liriomyza trifoliae is not present in Australia, but is currently found in Indonesia. So exotic leaf miners have 4 life stages: egg, larva, pupa, and adult. It's a very short life cycle that can have many generations within a growing season. What you can see in this little GIF here is a larva, and that's the most disruptive stage because it tunnels between the top and bottom layer of the leaf. And as it mines through the leaf, it creates these spirals known as leaf mines. And here's a little picture of the leaf mines. There's also additional damage known as stippling. You can kind of see it in that image there. And they all have a wide range of hosts. So vegetable leaf miner has over 200 hosts from a number of families, including celery, cucumber, pumpkin, eggplant, and the list goes on. There's also a number of weed hosts that they affect as well. So at the plant level, the impact caused by leaf mining includes photosynthesis disruption, stunted plants and failure to fruit, as well as crop losses and even sometimes crop death. Stippling also leads to secondary infection in some cases, and young plants are particularly susceptible to this. At the business level, possible farm quarantine can occur, a reduction in yield, as well as a loss of marketability, even in some of those crops that are healthy, but it's just the leaf that's been impacted. And costly pest management can occur as well due to resistance to a number of insecticides. So early detection, these pests can cause significant impacts, particularly early on in their establishment, before we can adjust management plans to conserve parasitoid wasps. Parasitoid wasps are an effective natural control option for exotic leaf miners as part of an integrated approach, but I'll talk a little bit more about them later. Early detection increases the chances of local containment or eradication, but also minimises disruption to these wasps and also avoids large and sudden outbreaks that we sometimes see, well, we have seen overseas extensively. Surveillance is a time-heavy and expensive task, and so we can't really say that you should be out there 24 hours a day looking, as it's not practical. So what we can do is target our surveillance by knowing a little bit more about the pests and what we're looking for. So this is a tiny fly that creates significant damage to the leaf. So it's much more effective to focus our surveillance on the leaf rather than focusing on the fly. This is because the leaf mines are long lasting whereas the fly is short-lived, and there is no efficient trapping system to lure these flies in. So visual surveillance is really where we want to focus our efforts. So when should you be looking? We know a lot about the biology of this pest as it has been studied extensively overseas. So we know what temperature it grows at and what temperature kills it, which means that we can add what we know about Australia's climate and get a prediction of where in Australia and at what times of the year these pests will grow and reproduce. And so here are some results of that from our project. The dark red indicates periods where this pest won't grow because it's either too hot or too cold or too dry, but the green areas are conditions that are really suitable. So you can see that Gippsland is in this yellow zone somewhere in the middle. And we can look at what time of the year that occurs. So you can see from this Melbourne model here that we've developed in the project, which is most similar to Gippsland, the suitable time of the year are late summer to late autumn, where it's predicted to be highest risk of establishment. And then in early spring to early summer is also predicted to be highest risk of leaf miner growth. If we want a little bit more context, we can compare it to a region such as Bundaberg in Queensland, where you can see that VLM growth occurs most of the year, but the growth potential is even higher than in Victoria, which is indicated by the dark green areas. As far as where you should be looking, a high-risk crop is where you should be looking. And just a reminder of some of the host preferences for Liriomyza sativa on this screen. And even within your own farm, you can be more targeted in the area that you are surveying in. So this is by considering the spread pathways. The spread pathways are heavily human-mediated pathways, as well as a bit of natural spread by wind. So if you consider your farm, it means that you should focus on areas that are nearest to the transport routes and unloading areas, as these are the most likely spots that you'll get an incursion. And it's also worth focusing on the incoming side, wind side of the paddock. So we have developed survey guidelines for industry to use to help them undertake surveillance, and a link to this resource will be provided in the post-webinar email. So now we've talked a little bit about surveillance and establishment risk of exotic leaf miners. What might management look like in Australia should they establish further? So we know from overseas that effective natural control of leaf miner comes from these parasitoid wasps that I've mentioned in an integrated pest management approach. Through the project, we undertook fieldwork in the Torres Strait and found that already there are at least 6 species of parasitoid wasps that are controlling that population of VLM in the incursion front. We also found that in some cases they were controlling up to 80% of all of the flies in that hotspot. Through the project, we've also done a review of the literature and found that Australia has at least 50 different wasp species that could control exotic leaf miners should they establish in our production regions. And a number of those species are already controlling leaf miner overseas, including Ophius species, Diglyphus and Hemitarsinus. So this may be important in helping slow VLM spread. So knowing that we have these biological control options to control leaf miner in Australia, it means we need to, when we consider the chemical options, we need to choose chemicals that will minimise disruption to parasitoid populations. So this means avoiding non-selective chemicals like OPs and SPs, and consider the off-target effects of chemicals targeting other pests. So we also have to consider the life cycle of exotic leaf miners. So chemicals need to either be systemic or translaminar to target the larvae inside the leaf. And we know from overseas that all 3 of these species of leaf miner can develop resistance to chemicals quite quickly. So this means we have to be very mindful of our choices. To that end, Plant Health Australia has been working hard to submit minor use permits to cover vegetable, nursery, melons, potatoes and onions. And so they considered all of the information out there when selecting pesticides and developing APVMA permits. And we currently have permits for these 5 listed in this slide. So we've developed a chemical management guide for exotic leaf miners, and the link is there on that slide, but we'll also send that one in the post webinar email. So just on my last slide for today is the detection of Liriomyza huidobrensis in Greater Western Sydney. There has been a detection on field-grown vegetables in Western Sydney, and the detection was first reported on the 22nd of October 2020. A sample was taken and identified a serpentine leaf miner on the 29th, and then that diagnosis was confirmed on the 2nd of November 2020. So following this, further samples were collected from other farms or other properties, and as a result, there have been 7 additional infested properties in the region. So right now, delimiting surveillance is underway to understand the extent of the spread of the pest, and the Consultative Committee on Emergency Plant Pests will meet again to decide if serpentine leaf miner is feasible to eradicate from Greater Sydney. So as discussed in this talk, this detection shows just how important it is to check crops regularly for signs of plant pests and diseases. And if you suspect a serpentine leaf miner infestation, or any exotic leaf miner for that matter, report it to Agriculture Victoria on the, at the Exotic Plant Pest Hotlines number, or if you're not listening from Victoria today, your state department, but also at the same number, and they'll direct you to the appropriate person to speak to. You can also stay up to date by visiting the New South Wales DPI website or signing up to AUSVEG's Frontline e-bulletin for up-to-date information, and I can send those links in the post-webinar email as well. So thank you for listening to my talk today. I'd also like to thank the following groups listed on the slide, because without them, the work that we've done for the project couldn't be undertaken. My contact details are there should you wish to get in touch, or if you have any questions, please feel free to send them through and we'll answer them in the Q&A session. Thank you.